You're listening to the Rent Roll Radio Show with Sterling Chapman. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. I'm joined here by a good friend of mine who I've been meaning to get on the show for a long time. He was giving me a hard time right before we started recording about how it took this long. But today we have Parker Stone. He is the principal at Clear Bay Capital. So Parker, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining.
Sterling, thanks so much for finally having me on. I've been asking this guy for probably a better part of a year to get on the show, and I was so pumped to get on. And I learned right before this Grant Cardone canceled, like last minute, so I'm his replacement.
So it's funny. My friends always get so offended because like when they want to get on the show, I send them the schedule, like the Calendly link. And they're like, dude, what the hell is this? Like I have to schedule like with a calendar to meet with you. But I just like it's all automated the way it sets it up and puts it on both of our calendars. So I just do it that way. But for those of y'all that are listening, I actually met Parker, I guess, has it been a year now?
It's been close to a year, man.
Yeah, we're working together on the Noonan syndication deal that we closed on earlier this year. So Parker and his team over at Clear Bay were actually the group that found that deal in Noonan. So we've been working together. I mean, multiple times a week for going on a year, and him and his partner over there are awesome guys, and I've really enjoyed working with them and getting to know them. So we'll get to that, and I really want to hear about all the cool things you guys are doing to find our next deal in the acquisition space with apartment syndication. But let's back up a little bit. Let's hear your whole story. What do you do? What did you start doing? How did you start getting into real estate? Why did you start getting into real estate? And kind of how did that, walk us through your journey and how that transformed into kind of what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, I didn't first get into multifamily. I started, I think like a lot of other investors in single family. At the time I was working at a company, and it was like my first job out of college, and I was so excited to get in there and make a difference. And
for our listeners who are not watching on YouTube, Parker's about 22.
And, how old are you? Growing facial hair. 27.
27.
Yeah. And I got into the workforce. I was excited, and it was a good company. I enjoyed myself there. But like 2 months in, there was just a huge layoff, and like half my half my department was gone like within 4 months on the job, and it was tough, man. You always hear this stuff, but mentors getting laid off. Some of your good friends that you made no longer showing up at work. It was tough. So then I was like, I really need to, find other ways to create passive income. So I'm pretty analytical. So I like looked online, and I'm like, could we do like franchising, or could we do, all these other different schemes? And I came across BiggerPockets, and that's where I, first started learning about, buying places at good prices, forced appreciation, and renting them out for cash flow. So at the time, my brother was going to school down at NC State, and that's in Raleigh, right? And I did a lot of research, and Raleigh is one of the fastest growing areas. So I flew down there. I started to look at some of the markets, and actually the very first place I ended up buying, I was just walking around the neighborhood. I dragged my brother out. I'm like, yeah, this is like a good place. Like, prices are affordable here. We can get appreciation. We can get rent. And this guy popped his head out the door. He's like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, I'm looking to buy a place. And he's like, oh, well, I need to sell this place really quickly. My wife just made me buy a house with a bigger yard for our dog. I need to I need to sell this quickly. So let's make a deal. So that's how we got our first property.
Nice. That never happens, by the way.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And yeah, it was he had to make a deal quickly, right? So we got a good price. We're looking to ultimately sell that place and, a few of our others in our portfolio to, eventually roll it into multifamily. And it's pretty crazy just how much things have appreciated down there in just a handful of years, right?
Yeah. I mean, even down here where we have like a super stagnant market, I was amazed at how some of my properties have appreciated that I didn't even fix up, like not even forced appreciation, just like sitting there over 3 years and you go revisit them and it's doubled in value. It's like, well, how the hell did that happen? But so I can only imagine in Raleigh, because I know how aggressive the growth is over there. Can you walk us through some of the numbers on some of those first deals?
Yeah. So that was our first deal. One of the following, that was probably our best. And, I'm based in New York, right? And at the time I was down in New York City. So I had to build networks pretty quickly, right?
Did you say you were partnering with your brother on these deals and he lived in Raleigh?
Yeah. Which helped. Because we started to, make contacts with brokers I guess realtors for single family, right? Realtors, contractors, property managers. And that's how we started to get, more leads coming in the door. And, it's helpful to have some family down there. And it's like, hey, I have this lead. Can you run over after work and check it out? But yeah, probably one of our better ones. We bought it from this wholesaler on, I think it's called TRIA, like Triangle Real Estate Investment Group down there. Mm-hmm. And they just post deals. Most of them aren't good, but I saw this when I was familiar with the area. She was selling it for $100,000. So we could buy it for $100,000. We put about $20K in. We finished the basement. It was by the university, so we were focusing on student rentals. So, all of a sudden put in a kind of a bedroom in the basement that could be another $500-$600 a month. So we did that, and then we're going to sell it this year, and it'll probably come in around 210 nice. Conservatively. So yeah, that should net us about like 90,000 or so.
And over how long of a period was that?
That wasn't that long ago. I think that was like 2 years ago, okay. 2.5. Yeah.
And if you've had it rented out this whole time?
Yeah. First couple of years it was, or first year it was students. Second year it was like young professionals.
And how much
transitioning to the workforce?
How much rent were you getting for it?
That one was maybe $1,400. I think the best one we did was like $1,600. And rents are actually going up quite a bit now. That might not be too far above market, but normally we probably would have only been able to get like $1,200 or so for it.
Okay, cool. So did that cover all of your expenses and some additional cash flow, or were you close to breaking even on that?
It did. Yeah. So the one that ran out for $1,600, I think probably all in, it was maybe $1,200. That probably included a little bit of reserves for like repair and whatnot. So we ultimately found out like student rentals, it was just a good way to increase cash flow because, most properties down in Raleigh, even back then they were under the 1% rule. Now they're probably much lower than that. But yeah, single family in general, like you can definitely do it. Sterling, I know you're doing it with your 250 property portfolio in Baton Rouge, but in general, it's pretty hard to, and that's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to transition more to multifamily.
Yeah, I will say that with a lot of the houses, I always like to pull the money out, and my thought process is I could reinvest
in like a refi, right? In a
refi. So I pull all the money out. So like if let's say I buy a house for 100 and I put 20 into it, and then like it appraises for 200, and I can pull 80% out. I can pull 160 out. Now, if I pull that 160 out, like chances are it's not really going to cash flow that great, but I've got an extra $40,000, right? Whereas if I only pulled the 120 back out at like a lower LTV, it would probably cash flow better. But my logic, every time I come to those scenarios, it's like, dude, how many months at like $200 a month is it going to take for me to get my hands on $40,000? You know what I mean? When I could go invest it in something else. And so, I mean, that's always been my kind of logic around that, is just to keep the ball rolling. But well, that's a great transition point then. Tell us about how you went from the single family space to the multifamily space. What attracted you to it, how you started learning about it, and then kind of how that's evolved along the way.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, being in New York, you can't just go over and, drive to your property to see how they're doing. So we needed to start making contacts, connections. And I did a lot of that through, like BiggerPockets and the websites like that. So I started, posting questions and some answers. And, on my profile, I think it said like New York, but investing in like Raleigh, North Carolina. So, great way to meet people. I highly encourage anyone that's new, just like get out there, start, messaging people, saying hi, seeing what people are doing. But anyway, so that's how I ultimately found, my partner. He saw I was investing in Raleigh, North Carolina areas. He saw I was in New York, and he messaged me and he's like, hey, sounds what you're doing is cool. I love the area. Let's get beers sometime and talk about how it's going down there. So that's how we first met. And at the time, I was like single family all the way. Like I can do this forced appreciation play. I can do the Sterling Chapman way to wealth, do that. And then, I started talking to him, and he, he's in private equity in real estate. So, he described like these, very large deals that they take down on a daily basis, and, the benefits of it. And you mentioned he was looking for multifamilies to add to his personal portfolio. And my first reaction was like, can you do that as an individual? Like, is that legal? Like, I mean, sure, financially, like I get it, but like there's got to be some rule or something that prevents you from doing that. And he assured me like it was totally legal, it was totally fine, and so yeah, so
he's pretty compelling too.
Yeah. So after that, I was like, wow, that sounds like a great idea. And yeah, but I mean, I was like, no, I'll still, focus on single family for now. I think we even since then bought a few more since that conversation. But I was, in my head, I'm like, well, okay, how can I, cool guy, like how can I add value here, right? And, all these contacts and, people I had met at different like real estate events, I flew down into Raleigh to say hi to people, right? You would meet people in multifamily space, you would meet different brokers. So I ultimately kind of pulled out my notes, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, I met a couple people in multifamily, and I was like, hey, let's set up this call, because it seems like, there's mutual interest here. And we just started talking, and yeah, I mean, we talked to some brokers, and they're like, yeah, well, come to find out, we have some deals in, I think like Fayetteville and Raleigh, and, let's talk through it. And, we started to work together, kind of analyzing some of the deals. I would say, I'll go run down this number, I'll go due diligence here. And he said the same thing. We'd meet back up, and we had both done what we said we were going to do. And I think that built a lot of trust, kind of being in the trenches in those first few deals. And nothing, unfortunately, ever actually materialized. We never locked down any of those properties, but I think we both kind of realized we had someone, smart, intelligent, we liked working with, and we could trust, to do things on these deals. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we, kind of just started this partnership working together more or less naturally. And we got, at one point we got kind of sick and tired of, trying to get these on market deals. And it's just, it's just so competitive now. We were talking the other day, like people are starting to offer like sub 4 caps on, these like big cities.
It's nuts out there with like multiple percentage hard day one. And I mean, it's.
Yeah. We were talking about, going to best and final for, this one property not too long ago in Atlanta we liked, and they're like, okay. So upon signing the PSA, we'd like 150,000 down day one. And then, you got 30 days to close or 30 days to due diligence and like 15 more days to close. And you got to really, love that property. Right. So anyways, yeah. So, especially newer guys coming into this specific multifamily market, you've heard the phrase like real estate, it's not an asset class, right? So he's got, he had a lot of experience with these, very large, like 300-400 unit deals. I had a lot of experience with these like single family deals, but, this like 50 to 150, 200, it's, even then it's a very different ball game than, both those.
Sure.
So we didn't have any track record coming in. So we decided, why not contact directly? So we enlisted some VAs, we pulled lists, we pulled data, and we just began, calling owners by the cell phones, landlines. Most of them were wrong numbers, but here and there we'd get someone that, would be at least willing to talk to us. And
so this was you making the phone calls, or the virtual assistants were making the phone calls?
Well, yeah, it started out us,
nice,
and then, you make 190 of them were, wrong numbers, or property managers that had no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
Nine were people that just immediately hung up. And then there was like one guy that was like, yeah, call me back tomorrow. And then didn't want to talk. So, yeah, so that was how we started. That's clearly a pretty brutal way to go about, trying to make contacts. So we got a dialer that can make a multitude of phone calls at once. We put virtual assistants, we gave them a script. We were honestly we had a script, and, in a perfect world, it would be like, are you interested? Yes. Okay. Like launch into this script. No. And then like try to talk them back into it. But at the end, it really just became like, is anybody willing to stay on the phone for a few minutes and entertain this idea? Right. So we just started calling. I think, I was looking back at the notes, and I think we made probably at least like 10,000 calls between all the different owners, multiple redials. Right.
I was talking at, I had that meetup last night. We hosted down in Baton Rouge, and one of the, at some point we were kind of like on a little panel up front answering questions, and somebody was like asking me like what my most effective like marketing was. And the question was around like direct to owner marketing. And I'm like, well, nothing. I've never done anything successful. Like I've sent out, I've made cold calls. I've sent out text messages, and I've like sent out Post-it notes or whatever, but like nobody's ever called me from any of that, or, I've never got any deals from any of that. And like, realistically, it's because I never got to like 10,000 like calls, you know what I mean? Like, you have to do so much of that, and people don't realize like you have to send tens of thousands of calls, tens of thousands of it's like, it's not just like, I'm going to send out 300 or 400, note cards, and some 3 people are going to call me back and one of them's going to buy.
I know it's such a numbers game. I mean, even in ads, I was reading somewhere like, digital ads, you guys spend at least like a few thousand, 3,000 or 4,000 a month, just to have like any traction whatsoever. Which is anyways, so it's such a numbers game. It's very hard. I think it's like over 95% of transactions happen on market. And so that's why we're starting to build out our, kind of our broker relationships and trying to, eventually submit more LOIs on market. But anyways, but how we found the deal in Atlanta is we were, cold calling. And again, I had contacts and property in Raleigh. My partner was interested in Raleigh. So we were calling property owners in the Raleigh market. We ended up contacting this one gentleman and he's like, hey, I'm in New York City. My partner's in Hong Kong. We're not selling this Raleigh property, but we were LPs, limited partners, like silent partners, right, on this deal in Atlanta. The general partner we pledged our capital with, he, for whatever reason, only finished a portion of the renovation he thought he was going to, and it was just a bad situation. So they ultimately kicked him out of the partnership, and so now we're stuck with this property in Atlanta. We're not super interested in, name a price. We'll be willing to work with you to essentially get out of the deal. And that's how we found the property, which is funny because I've since talked to brokers in Atlanta, and one of the ways I try to pique their interest is like, hey, we bought a property in Atlanta earlier this year. We got it off market, but we want more deal flow. So like let's talk with what you have, and I usually get a lot of explicit language, like how the heck did you find that property? I must have called it hundreds, dozens of times.
Right.
And that's why, because the magic phone number was on was a total different property and a total different market they probably never thought about reaching.
Nice.
So that's how we got the property. I'm not sure how much you've told your listeners, but it's going great. There were, 9 units down to the studs, pretty rough shape. We came in there, fixed them all up, getting rents. I mean, we were underwriting, we knew it'd be conservative, right? We were targeting like $1,000 or so. And, the latest market analysis, we could probably push it up closer to 1,300, right?
Yeah, that's huge. It's so huge.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you think about, your P&L, right? Like what's the single biggest number on it, right? It's that top line. Sure. So even a small percentage adjustment on it can, obviously make a huge difference or more an outsized impact than like any other line item on it.
Yeah. So, that Noonan has been an absolute home run. It's like the gift that keeps on giving with the good news story. And we always talk about how hard it is to recreate in this market, as competitive as it is right now. What are you guys doing? You said you're building out your broker relationships and kind of trying to create a system to analyze more deals, to be able to submit more LOIs. Are you exclusively going the broker route now, or are you still doing the off market thing as well?
We're putting a lot of effort into the broker route, but we still definitely want to keep calling. And it's interesting. We'll analyze a property in a market, and again, rent is the biggest variable, arguably, right? Sure. Even $25 in rent that you miss or overachieve can really impact the numbers. So we spend a lot of time when we're looking at deals, pulling comparables and seeing what they're renting for. So in our analysis, we'll keep track of, maybe the average rent in an area is $1,100. But there's this one comparable that's renting for $975. Everything else looks, perfect about the property, right? But for whatever reason, the owner hasn't, they'd rather just have it 100% occupied, or
Sure.
they're just, they've taken their pulse off the market.
But people don't realize there's, especially when you get into like the mom and pop type property managers or property owners, that like raising rent can be challenging from like an emotional standpoint, because you get anxious when things sit vacant, and you like, so many people are so willing to drop it early to just keep it filled versus really testing the market. And that's how rents go unraised for so many years, because everybody's afraid to test the market. They just want a warm body in there to make sure, they're covering their baseline.
Yeah. Or, they've kind of gotten distracted. And I mean, if you're distracted for a month or two in this climate, you're going to be missing a big percentage of rent increase, right? Because right now rents are going up so fast pretty much across the board. Or, the third reason might be, maybe they're just undercapitalized. Like maybe it's a classic unit that, is under market. And if they spend, 12, 15,000 per unit, they could get a huge rent bump, but, they may just not have the capital or willpower to, go through that operation. So yeah, I definitely think there's, still opportunity in the market. And, we've even seen a couple OMs offering memorandums from brokers that, usually you see numbers that you're like, how the heck do they think we're going to hit that number? But there's been a couple OMs where, we think, again, rent's going up so fast, it's arguably a little conservative. And, those are the ones we're really trying to target now. But yeah, I mean, so that's a little bit of how we're thinking of maybe trying to target more off-market properties. And then on market, we pulled a big list of data. We kind of know for each of our target markets, which in general are in the Southeast, the vast Southeast growing markets. We're able to see which brokers have done over like the past 12, 18 months, have done the most deals, deal size, kind of some other specifics that we're interested in. So we kind of pulled those brokerages, and we're, slowly making phone calls, reaching out, introducing ourselves, and, getting on their lists, kind of talking a little bit more about what we're interested in. And that's kind of how we're building the relationship, trying to increase that deal flow. And then on the backside, we've got virtual assistants. We created what we've affectionately called the first pass model, which is kind of like a simplified analysis where there's maybe like 10, 15 inputs that we train the VAs to input. And then the final piece is just having them analyze the market. And then we'll analyze their analysis to see what rents ultimately will kind of be. But that's kind of what we've been building out. And it's really helping us, take our ability to analyze, a handful of properties a week to, 10, 15, 20 or so. Awesome. And I think, that's kind of what it takes in this market to be able to find a deal.
Absolutely. So what is your advice for somebody that's looking to get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, just start building your network. Try to find partnerships. I think when I, kind of started out, there were, certain people that are like, well, stay away from partnerships. Like it's, people are crazy, it can get dangerous. But I would say arguably it's probably more dangerous or more risky to go out on your own and do it. And I mean, for me personally, as an individual, that's one of the reasons why I really want to get into multifamily, just because you can structure it so much more easily in a partnership and bring in multiple team members and have a line item for property management versus single family. It's not always the case if you don't have scale like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to hop over to our radio round. Just 3 questions to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better. First question is, what's your favorite book?
Yeah, I thought you might ask that. I don't necessarily have a favorite book. Probably the one I recommend for a lot of people. I made my siblings go sit down and read it. It's Set for Life by Scott Trench.
I interviewed Scott Trench on this show.
Did you really?
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
I met him at Joe Fairless's conference that we're going to.
February, right?
In February.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
No, it's a good book. I think he's got a lot of great mentality for, someone younger starting out to, get yourself set up into a position where you can kind of take these bets like we did with Noonan.
Sure.
And ultimately succeeded.
Awesome. What's your favorite quote?
Yeah, I had to look it up beforehand, but it's attributed to Jack Ma. I'm not going to promise it's actually by him, but it's there are people less qualified than you doing things you want to do simply because they decided to take action.
Nice.
Nice. I love it. I don't know.
That's 100% sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Yeah, I'm in a few different leagues. I play sand volleyball. We don't have a beach up here. Yeah, it's great to get out, just enjoy the weather. Play pickup basketball like Wednesday nights.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Parker, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully, at some point in the future, we can get your partner on here. I've loved working with you guys over the last year. Absolutely enjoyed. Something that I don't know if I've ever said this really stuck with me when we first met, and we were kind of like, it was almost like one of those speed dating things where you're like trying to get to know people if you like want to work with them or not, like feeling out the people. And it was, we were asking you like what you were looking for, and you made the comment, you're like, I just want to work with people that like I enjoy working with. Like, I just want to hang out with cool people that I like being around. It wasn't like coin driven. It wasn't like, I need somebody who's going to do this. You're like, I just want to hang out with cool people. Like, I just want to work with people. And that really stuck out to me to where like, I really like tried to change to the point where like, I want to make sure all of our interactions, like, we're cool people to work with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
and like just you saying that made me like focus on trying to be like a better partner, you know what I mean? A better teammate. So that always stuck out to me. I don't think I ever told you that, but that was cool. So I'm sure I'll see you Tuesday night on our regular meetup, and we look forward to doing more deals together and following your journey.
Yeah, thanks, man. No, it's been great working with you. Again, on our side, we're definitely more analytical. I think, without Sterling, we'd probably still be picking out which siding to put on the building. Yeah. So you're definitely a cool person to work with, man. And I look forward to doing a bunch more deals with you.
Real quick, how can our listeners find out more about Clear Bay Capital?
Go to our website, clearbaycapital.com. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter. We've got some, really great blog posts. Email me at pstone@clearbaycapital.com. We're rolling out the model I talked about. Our first pass model can help you analyze deals a lot quicker. But if you want the beta version, send me a message. I'd be happy to connect you and walk you through it.
And you can also follow them on Instagram. They have very comprehensive, well thought out Instagram posts.
Yes, we spend way too much time talking about like what image we want on it.
I bet. All right. Thanks. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rent Roll Radio Show, brought to you by Crestworth Capital. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review. You can also visit us at crestworthcapital.com or rentrollradio.com, or follow us on Facebook at Rentroll Radio or at Crestworth Capital. If you would like to reach us, feel free to shoot us an email at info@rentrollradio.com or sterling@crestworthcapital.com. We hope you come back next week to join us on some more of our journey. Until then, happy investing.